Welcome to a very special episode of Celebrate Your Story. Most weeks we shine a light on one person's journey, someone who's faced challenges, probably learned lessons, and found meaning along the way. But this week's a little different. We'll celebrate the story of a place, St. John's Residence for Boys, and the generations of people who have helped young men find their footing and their future for more than 100 years. For me, St. John's isn't just part of that history, it's where my own professional history began. I recently had the chance to visit again the campus in Rockaway Beach, Queens, to walk through the halls, meet the staff, and spend some time with the young men who call it home today. It brought back a lot of memories, and it reminded me just how powerful one caring community can be in shaping a life. To help me share that experience, I've invited Michaela Barker, who joined me during the visit, to guide our conversation. Together we'll talk about what we saw, the lessons that still guide St. John's today, and the enduring power of giving young men a place and a story they can call their own.
So can you shed some light on how you even got to St. John's? What was your career path, and how did you land this job?
Well, short-lived. My career before I started 1-800-Flowers, because I was 24 when I started 1-800-Flowers. And so I grew up in South Queens, neighborhood South Ozone Park. Dad was a painting contractor, oldest of 5, very much a blue-collar neighborhood, lots of good people, mostly people who returned from the war or who hadn't quite been old enough to get to the war, so it was a veterans community.
Okay.
And lots of tradesmen, public servants, policemen, firemen, sanitation workers, plumbers, carpenters,
A lot of skilled
HVAC
labor.
guys. Yeah, absolutely. Blue-collar workers and contractors. And I went to one college in New Jersey who wasn't up to my academic standards. Maybe I wasn't up to theirs.
It's up for debate.
They suggested I go elsewhere. They were right. I then got lucky enough to get into City University, John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Thought I'd become a policeman, which was aspirational for me. And but working part-time, tending bar in a neighborhood place in Queens. A friend of mine worked in this group home, St. John's group home, and he ran the group home, and he was a friend and who I liked and respected, and I'd ask him about the work all the time.
Okay.
Finally, one day he said, well, you seem like you'd be interested. Why don't you come down to the house and have dinner with me one night? So I did. And so I had dinner with him and the guys. And at the end of that session, he asked me to come talk to him in the office that he had down in the lower level. It was a 2-story brick house. And Richmond Hill was a nice neighborhood. Far Rockaway was a tough neighborhood. And he asked if I wouldn't come downstairs to his office and have a chat with him. He said, do you think you'd ever like to give this work a try? And I said, yeah, I think I would. So he flipped me his key ring and said, good, I need a solid. I have no one to work tonight.
That very night.
Can you start tonight? So my job was to get the guys to bed at an appropriate hour, go to my own room, sleep overnight, get up in the morning, get them all out to school, and then the day staff would come on, and I'd come back at 4 o'clock the next night. So that started a 14-year career for me. Because I'm old and broken down, I have history, which means I used to live in this building. I started working at St. John's. It was my first job that was like a real career job. I'd worked in retail. My dad was a painter, so I worked for him. And so my first job was I was a live-in counselor in what was the Far Rockaway group home then. So it's just like the Richmond Hill group home, if you've ever seen that. A 2-story brick house, 10 guys, some 2 to a room, some 1 to a room. Really nice houses. And I was a living counselor there. Then I ran the group home that is still in Richmond Hill.
You talking about eyeballs? You talking about for boys or girls?
Boys, all boys. And then I moved back here and lived in this building for a while. And that building was, I told these guys before, the school was on the 4th floor of that building. 3rd floor was offices and an auditorium. Then we had a kitchen, a workshop, and a club room for sports and all was on the ground floor of this end of the building. And so we'd be back and forth between those. But we had 14 occupied apartments in here with 12 guys in each. So we had a lot of guys on campus. So where the cars are parked now, that play yard was going all the time. So I worked here for 14 years. And then I was a bartender in Manhattan on nights and weekends, on weekend nights. And a guy who would stay in the bar late at night when we'd be closing up and he'd talk, he said he owned a flower shop across the street and he was going to sell it. So I had just bought a house in Brooklyn, fixed it up and sold it, and I had a little profit in it. And I asked him how much was he selling the flower shop for, and he told me. And I said, oh my God, that's the exact amount of profit I had in my house that I just sold in Greenpoint. So I wound up buying that flower shop, and for the next bunch of years, I just opened up a new shop every 6 months or so until I had a whole lot of flower shops. And then I changed the name of the company to 1-800-Flowers, sold off the shops to our franchisees. And for the 50 years, next year, 50 years, I've been building a flower and gift company. And it's called 1-800-Flowers. We own other brands like Harry and David. We have chocolate companies, cookie companies, anything that you would gift. And people order it online on their phone or on a website. And so we built a business, and I get to work with these people all the time. These are my team. They're not that good, but they're nice.
So St. John's has always been about helping people, especially the residents there, not only with their life, but trying to find out what their story is. So for those of us who might not know the full story of what St. John's is and how it came to be, could you share a little bit more about the purpose of St. John's?
Well, that purpose has evolved over more than 100 years of the existence of St. John's. They started out in Brooklyn, and then they migrated to Rockaway Beach in Queens a long time ago. But the mission has stayed similar in the sense that they were always focused on boys and boys who were in tough circumstances. Could be early days they were orphaned. Okay. And then it evolved to kids who had had challenges. Could be a challenge in the family, some addiction issues, absence of one parent or another, or in the later years, kids who'd gotten in trouble because of their circumstances, or at least came to the attention of the Department of Social Services in New York City that these kids were at risk. Some of them had been arrested, some of them notified by school that they'd been chewing for a long time. So it's a whole variety of circumstances which would have brought them to the attention of Department of Social Services, the court system, or the school system. No matter, you're writing your book, your own book every day, your story. And it's how do you tell the story about the good and the bad? How do you make fun of yourself? In the book, George calls it resilience. So yeah, I was at St. John's. I was there for 8 months. Now you could be embarrassed about that. You could say it was a tough time, or you can make it part of your story and celebrate it. And the best thing I learned, whether I was hanging around with Brother Tom or working in the bar, was get to know people. There's something I can learn from everybody. Everybody can teach me something, and I'm just always looking to learn more.
So can you give us an example of a way that you built a personal connection, either with one of the staff members or one of the boys that you were overseeing?
Well, you had to find a key to each one. You know, were they interested in sports? We had several really good athletes in the house. Okay. In my first group home in Far Rockaway, several who played football for the Far Rockaway High School football team. They were big and very good athletes. I had one guy who could be a real problem. He was a time bomb. If he went off, it was hell to pay, and the whole house would be disrupted. He was a quiet kid, but then he'd explode. You remember the movie Stripe? There was a guy named Francis. If you touch me, I'll kill you.
Oh, he was that type of kid.
This was Joe. Literally, if you touched him, it would get physical, and it would be bad. And so he was isolated. No one would go near Joe. And he had this beautiful head of dark, black, straight hair. And fastidious in how he combed it and pulled it back. And that was his trademark. Well, I invested in a relationship with Joe, so much to the point that not only would I not be afraid to touch him, when I came to work, I'd have to seek him out. We had an upstairs, there were bedrooms on both floors. There was an upstairs living room in the front of the house, and of course, one on the first floor as well. And then we had the office downstairs and workout stuff in the basement, storage. a little bit of a ping pong table, and I'd have to go find Joe,
Oh, really?
seek him out, make believe I didn't see him, and I'd go over and mess up his hair. That's how much of a relationship we formed. And he didn't kill me.
Okay.
He'd make a fuss. He'd go, "Oh, he did it again!" And you have to go into the bathroom and
Fix it.
murmuring about it. He did it again. He loved it, and that was ours. That was our special connect. No one else
Yeah.
could do that.
Oh,
They'd
yeah.
lose an arm.
He wouldn't let anybody else touch his hair, but you could touch his hair.
And if I didn't seek him out and create our special bond, it was trouble to pay that night.
Okay. It's almost like you guys had your own version of a handshake. You know how people will greet each other
It
with
was
handshake?
our secret handshake.
Okay.
And he turned out to be a terrific kid, and someone I hoped continued to do well. But he was a tough number to crack.
But you did it. You built that relationship and you did it.
I invested in a relationship. I showed him that I cared.
And that's what matters. That's what matters.
When I was here, kids were here longer. When I lived in Groupon, I had some kids with me for 8 or 9 years. Because basically they just grew up, we just grew up together. So it was very different. And then over time, the length of stay kept getting shorter and shorter. But I had 4 guys who finished in the group home, aged out, and all 4 of them went into the military after. And I ran into one several years ago, and he became the most senior master sergeant in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
He used to play, he was in our Far Rockaway group home, and he used to play football for Far Rockaway High School. We had 3 guys on the football team at Far Rockaway High School from the Far Rockaway group home, and he was a star running back. And he did 30 years in the Marine Corps, and he was the highest ranked non-commissioned officer in the Marine Corps. He's a terrific guy.
And now, speaking of visits, I want to talk about your most recent visit to St. John's. So what were your impressions as you stepped back onto the campus, and how have things changed or stayed the same?
Yes, both. Things have changed and things have stayed the same. So the things that have stayed the same are the kids and their needs. I would say we lived through it, the people who did that work. And that's what was remarkable to me, because not only was I a caretaker, but I was in the program.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the people I worked with had a huge influence on my life, none more than Jane Garrity, who was my assistant for a decade there. She was really the boss, but she made believe I was the boss and taught me so much. Just the most wonderful woman, mother of 3 boys there in Belle Harbor, Rockaway Beach area, a wonderful husband who was a teacher. They became family. And but I learned so much from those people around me, and all these people who were doing the good work, not paid a lot of money, but just doing the good work, and were really part of a therapeutic community that wanted to do the right things and cared about these kids, and they could be a handful. They could be a lot of trouble. But as much as I was paid to be a counselor, my learning curve was awfully steep.
Right.
And I was learning so much more about myself. You know, you're plunged in with 10 teenage boys. They are not shy about pointing out your inconsistencies. If you're going to work out with them downstairs, they'll point out that your left bicep is smaller than your right bicep, or your eye twitches when you're telling a story.
They notice everything. And they have no filter. No filter.
But it was the best growing up time for me. I wasn't fortunate enough to serve in the military. I wish I had, but it was my version of the military, as having your head dunked into something you're not comfortable with,
Right.
and learning how to develop your skills and be beneficial to other people.
So wrapping things up really quickly, how do you feel like your work at St. John's prepared you for the future? And do you see any parallels between your work at St. John's and running 1-800-Flowers?
Well, I don't run 1-800-Flowers anymore, and that's a good thing for the people at 1-800-Flowers and for the shareholders. I do see lots of parallels. It was so meaningful to me, that work, and the learning that I experienced there, and the growing growth personally and professionally. That facilitated for me there. I think the things I learned about building relationships, where to keep distance, what distance level you should keep with people, learning that my job as a manager or a leader was to get the best out of those people. What I mean by that is help them to see that they had the ability to accomplish a lot more than maybe even they imagined they could achieve. And that working in groups is a better way to work. Setting goals is important. Keeping score along the way is really important. Making it fun when you can. Not everybody works just for the green dollar paycheck. That you can create currencies that are meaningful to people along the way, recognition, rewards, just fun kinds of milestones. That work is a lot more than a paycheck. It's social. It's your raison d'etre. So everything I think I know today started with what I learned there about managing myself, managing people. I'll go back to my checklist.
And it sounds like it had a great impact on you.
Huge.
So thank you so much for sharing it. I can't wait for them to see more of your story.
And when you're leaving St. John's, make sure you maintain relationships with these people for the rest of your life. You know, people say you can never go home again. I've heard that my whole life. The idea that once you've grown and changed, the places that shaped you somehow won't feel the same. But standing there on the St. John's campus, walking the same halls I walked as a young man, I realized that that's not quite true. Sure, I've changed. Life takes you in directions you could never predict. But St. John's, what surprised me the most is how little changed where it really mattered. The buildings may have been renovated, the programs expanded, the opportunities maybe even broader, but the heartbeat of the place is exactly the same. It's still a community that meets young men where they are. It still believes in second, maybe third chances and fresh starts. It still gives boys the structure, support, and tough love they need to find their footing. And it still runs on the dedication of people who show up every day determined to make a difference. When I was a young employee there, I didn't know that my life would become what it is today, but I knew that St. John's was giving me the tools, patience, perspective, and a belief in the power of showing up for others. Seeing that same spirit alive today reminded me that the most enduring stories aren't written in buildings or on programs. They're written in people. Maybe you can go home again, not because everything is the same, but because the things that truly matter have stayed true.